So, is he driving the Hillary train, throwing President Obama under the bus, or uplifting the Democrats to new heights in a historic flight? Or all three at the same exact time? Who am I talking about? We'll talk about that next on Get Right with Lenny McAllister, starting right
now. Get Right with Lenny McAllister.
Get out! The way we help bring back America and we build the bridges and bring people together is by making sure we hold everybody accountable in a 360 fashion.
So let me close with this. Yes, there is a change that we can believe in, but it will never come from a politician or a government program.
You cannot find physical sanity here in the land of Lincoln from Carbondale to Elgin that we collectively continue to tolerate the insanity found on the streets of South Chicago and East Texas.
We got to move away from the American Idol soundbite nature of politics and back to the American statesman of humble servant leadership that we used to see in politics.
It is time to roll out the era of the new, educated, engaged, and energized American citizen.
I go do the jail ministry. I speak to the kids in the streets. So I'm never going to lay down being a conservative just as much as I'll never lay down being a proud African American.
I feel like a black republic. Money I got coming in. Can't turn my back on the hood. I got love for them. Can't clean my act.
It's hump day. It's Wednesday. It's another opportunity for you and me to talk once again here on Get Right with Lenny McAllister. You know the drill. You know the drill. Twitter, LENNYMCALLISTER. On Facebook, it's tinyurl.com/LENNYPAGE. And we got something interesting to talk about today, as we always do. We generally do. Obamacare is just, it's the gift that keeps on giving if you like talking about this stuff and if you're a Republican. Because there are so many people that are coming out of the woodwork now that you knew, and maybe this is my black radar going off. Maybe that's what this is. But there was always something to me, and again, you can agree, disagree. I'm probably going to be a little controversial as I get into President Bubba. But as I slide into talking about President Bubba and what I brought up at the beginning of the podcast, which is basically, was it for Hillary, against Obama, or uplifting the Democrats, or all three? You know, you probably can guess my take on that. But before I go into it, let's just, let me go into my black radar, if you will. There was always something, and if you're an African American, you know what I mean, and if you're saying that this isn't true, you're lying to yourself. That's just going to be my take. I'm not going to even give you any squishy wiggle room. If you're an African American, yeah, and even if you are not an African American, there had to have been something inside of you that made you believe that at some point in time, people that were kind of sort of backing up behind President Obama to catch his back, whether it was in 2012 for re-election or during the midterms or the rollout of Obamacare before October 1st, 2013, or anything along those lines. I can continue on and on and on and on. You had to know that there was that sneaking suspicion that at some point in time, there was going to be a round of people that are Democrats, that are Obama supporters, at least in name. Maybe not wholeheartedly, or maybe they were wholeheartedly, and that started shifting. But at some point in time, somebody or a set of somebodies were going to start reminding this president that A, you're a lame duck, and B, you are the first African American president. You come here with no legacy. You are an upstart that was a freshman senator that came, you basically won your Senate primary in 2004 because of Chicago, got you through that race, got you over the hump, and then you ended up clearing by a significant margin because you were able to get the black vote and then start securing numbers from there. And then you were behind in the polls, and Jack Ryan jumped out of the race, which then allowed you to win by this insanely huge amount over Alan Keyes, who just had no ties to the state whatsoever. And then 2 years later, you run for the presidency with no pedigree, with hope and change, and a very thin record, and you win. You broke the glass ceiling, congratulations. But when things really go bad and we don't need you anymore, we are really, really going to run the bus over you. And I'm sorry, maybe that's just me being cynical. Maybe that's just being black in America for too long. Maybe that's being cynical about race relations in America. But to me, and I know there are some African Americans out there that may feel the same way, they just won't voice it. But there was going to come a time where Democrats and white Democrats that kind of had to sort of get behind President Obama. I mean, folks that talk about Negro dialects, for example. Don't tell me that there are no races in the Democratic Party. When a senior Democratic official talks about President Obama not having that Negro dialect. Hell. You knew that. Don't come to me. This got me already fired up. I'm talking about Bubba before we even get into it. Don't come to me when there are quotes in books talking about President Clinton going to the late Senator Kennedy saying, this guy would have been serving us coffee just a couple years ago. Dude still had a Harvard law degree. I mean, Georgetown, Harvard, and Harvard. I mean, Georgetown, Harvard, and Harvard walk into a bar and they buy it. That's how that joke goes. So it's not as though Harvard and its law school is just something to cast aside if you went to Georgetown. And by the way, it's not like Bubba came from legacy either. He's creating it, obviously, but it's not like he came from it. So I'm just putting it out there. So don't tell me there aren't some people with some very funny racial positions in the Democratic Party. And while we're on Bubba, let's not go to, Jesse Jackson won South Carolina too. It's the biggest fairy tale I've ever heard of, which that might be true. But the fact about that you would go to Jesse Jackson and say, oh, he only won South Carolina because he's black and there's no way he can do any of this other stuff. Don't come and tell me that there's not a precedent on the Democratic side of the aisle where these types of thoughts aren't out there. And I go to another example. Before I get into my Black Dar or Black Radar or whatever you want to call it, I don't really want to call it Black Dar, but whatever. And before I go into Bubba as far as that question that I brought up at the beginning of the podcast, I go to the end of 2010 when the Tea Party just annihilated a lot of Democratic candidates and even some Republican primary candidates, both good and bad, on its way to this huge wave of change that the Republican Party enjoyed, whether it was from Tea Party activists and Tea Party candidates and or Republican candidates in the midterm elections. And how President Obama gave the Republicans an extension on the Bush tax rates for another 2 years. And the Democrats went nuts. There were Democratic elected officials in Washington, in the House and or Senate that would not go on record with their name, but they were quoted as saying, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He doesn't deserve to be president. They started insulting his political maturity and all this other. They started insulting him in quite the same way that the Republicans did. At a time where people like me called out and disagreed with and publicly protested, if you will, people like Rush Limbaugh calling him the boy prince president. Which to me, again, okay, this isn't a dumb guy. I may disagree with his policies, but come on, let's do this the right way. But the Democrats did the same exact thing at the end of 2010. I wrote about it in The Root. The Reverend Al Sharpton talked about my article in The Root, and then I called it and was on his show to talk about the article, about this stuff. And I said, is this racism too? I think that was actually the name of the article. Is this racism too? When the Democrats did it at the end of 2010, was it racism too, the same way the Republicans were doing it in 2009 and 2010? I brought it up. Now, of course, don't sit there and say, well, when you're right, cartoons are watermelons on the lawn of the White House, that's racist, but Negro dialect is not. Yes, obviously, watermelons on the White House lawn in a cartoon, or, like I infamously bring this up all the time, I'm at a tea party, you dress up President Obama, you stick his head up his butt, have him standing in front of the White House, and on the top of the White House is inscriptioned, "Da Crib." Yeah, boy. Like President Obama's walking around with a big clock around his neck, flinching like Flavor Flav, talking about, I'm in the hizzy. So I get the difference between that and some of the nuanced things that could come out when you're, again, disagreeing with policy on either side of the aisle. But there was a line that was being crossed in 2010 after the midterm elections when President Obama gave up on fighting against the Bush-era tax rates and gave the extension, even though he still had Democrats controlling both chambers of Congress, and did not need to do that. He just didn't need to do it. Now, granted, he wanted to get the START treaty through and everything else, but he could have negotiated something else. He negotiated Don't Ask, Don't Tell and got it through. Maybe there was something else he could have negotiated through without giving that up. And when he did give that up and negotiated with Republicans, what happened? There were Democrats that turned on him. To me, that is a precursor. That is a precursor to what you're starting to see right now, which is simply this. You are starting to see people say that, A, President Obama is no longer an asset to us. B, all of that history-making stuff that made people so attracted to him, the hopey, changey, that Sarah Palin used to love talking about a couple years ago, that's all faded away. We don't need that. Therefore, under the bus he goes. And by the way, heck, if black people don't come out in 2014, he's not going to help us with the black vote. If we have him with our candidates and they're trying to back away from him, that's not going to help us either. He has no legacy. He's wounded. He's a lame duck president. And by the way, being the first African American president and high unemployment rate when it comes to black people and basically everybody, and people jumping out of the workforce and the economy still being stagnant and everything else along those lines, it does not help us anymore. And since there's no legacy or no political favors from 30 years ago that force us to stay in the game, like would be the case if this were a Kennedy or if this were Chelsea Clinton in this role, 20 years or 30 years down the road or whatever. Or if this was name 100 political names that this could be. Obama's not a political name. There's one Obama that's been in American politics. Ergo, because, no legacy, because African American, and we know that race is going in the wrong direction in America, and because, just, coincidentally, lest we forget, most of his policies haven't worked. They haven't worked for the economy. They're not working for Obamacare. They haven't gotten us to work together more as a nation. The foreign policy is inconsistent. He won because of two candidates and a bad brand name with the Republican Party that just didn't jibe. And then even in 2012, he still almost threw it away because he absolutely bombed at the first debate. Why would they stand beside him? So politically, they wouldn't stand beside him, but there is an element that's like, oh, and by the way, dude, I don't care if you have a Columbia undergrad and a Harvard law degree and you were a U.S. senator and you were a state senator, and I don't really care if you got white grandparents all you want. You're the first African-American president from Chicago, no less, and things aren't going right, so we're going to basically treat you as such from this point on. That's my take on my black radar. This is kind of like the reminder to him. There were, again, precursors in 2010 and other examples, Negro dialect, other examples that had come up from the Democratic side. But here we sit in 2013, and it's going full bore, which leads to what I was talking about with President Bubba Clinton. Was his critique of saying, Mr. President, you need to honor your promise of if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. It'd be nice if he'd have said that about the other promises he said, like, hey, if you pass the stimulus package, unemployment will not go over 7.5% or whatever it was. It was in the sevens. Just saying. It's a little late to kind of push him to keep him promises, but hey, we appreciate President Clinton doing that. With that said, was it to throw President Obama under the bus because they apparently don't like each other? Was it to help Mrs. Clinton and drive the Hillary train as they barrel through to 2016? Or was it to uplift and on eagle's wings take the Democrats and fly them over the Obama administration malaise that's coming from Obamacare and hopefully lift them to victory in 2014? I would contend, as you probably already figured out, it's a little bit of all of them. anytime I think President Clinton has an opportunity, and again, you can agree, disagree, you know where to find me on Twitter and on Facebook. I think that anytime that President Obama has an opportunity to stick it to, in this instance, the man, it's kind of ironic because the man's usually white, and in this instance, the man is the president, and the president is African American, so irony. But in this instance, to be able to stick it to the man, to be able to jab President Obama right in the ribs, doink, you're not the politician you think you are, doink, I was a better president than you, doink, if I'd have just had a chance with these Republicans, I would have had healthcare reform done by now, doink, and by the way, you did all this to beat my wife, and this is what you do, this is how you throw up in the Oval Office on a regular basis with your policies and your execution, doink. So yeah, that's part of it. I also think that yes, in doing that, it helps Mrs. Clinton because now it's like, well, you know, you can have a real leader, and yeah, you know, maybe there are some good Republicans out there, but really, the best Republican's still not better than a good Democrat. I mean, that's what he would say, right? I mean, I wouldn't say that, but that's what President Clinton would say, right? And of course, who would he usher out? He would usher out his wife quite naturally and say, we got a good Democrat right here who ran for president, who was Secretary of State, was a U.S. Senator, was a First Lady, knows the ins and outs of the White House, knows how government works, knows the geopolitical stage that we have to interact on. He would say all those things quite naturally, and he's going to be saying them starting in 2014. Anywho. So yes, part of that was also, you know, driving that train. He's the conductor, whether she likes it or not. Because she's still not as popular as he is, despite all the stuff he's done, personally. When people have money in their pocket in the 1990s, and he's a young president, and he was the first. And that's the other thing, by the way. It's always a dig in the ribs to President Obama that, dude, you may be the first African-American president, but I'm still the first black president, child of God. And people were at work, and people respect me more, and the economy was better, and people were happier, and I got along with Republicans. Yes, I didn't get healthcare reform through the way I wanted to. Hillary Care really wasn't what we would have liked to have been, and maybe it did lead to the Republican Revolution, but daggone it, I got reelected. And daggone it, the economy was purring pretty well when I left, and we left with a surplus. Now, I would like to see you top that. I would like to see you take your cash for clunkers stimulus package. You know, it's not really high unemployment. You got to remember what we had in the first place. And hey, by the way, the Republican boogeymen are horrible. Still vote for me. Because out of all the things I just mentioned, Mr. Obama, sir, 44th President of the United States, me as number 42, I could have gotten all the former things that I mentioned to work for me. The only thing you got to work for you was the last thing I said, which is basically the Republicans are full of boogeymen in their party, and please vote for me and reelect me. So, yeah, I think he loves jabbing him in the ribs. He obviously wants to help Mrs. Clinton because he owes her. They may love each other again, or maybe they never fell out of love. But, yeah, in some ways it's like, okay, I owe you. I put you through Hades, personally and politically, and you're just as smart, if not smarter, than I am. You're just as talented, if not more talented, than I am. And so I'm going to be here for you. But I also think that the third aspect of this, and again, agree, disagree, you know where to find me on Twitter, goes back to who's going to uplift the Democrats. Because again, you have a track record. Did President Obama, with historic political capital coming into the White House in January 2009, where literally people froze in Washington, D.C. wearing Obama t-shirts and hats and shoes and pajamas and gloves. There was an Obama comic book with Spider-Man. Come on. I mean, that's how much political capital he came into the White House with in January 2009. And by 2010, he could not even save his own former Senate seat in Illinois. So, again, you got these folks saying, okay, How are we going to win in 2014 to make sure that the Democrats control both chambers of Congress, to make sure that this guy in the last 2 years of his presidency can get something done and give us some decent momentum as we have our primaries on the Democratic side in 2016? Just in case Hillary decides to run. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, snort, snort. The only person that could possibly do it and at least provide the break in the dam to allow the Democrats to oppose the president, stand on their own 2 feet, seem like they're being sensible, and win purple districts in states, it's not going to be President Obama. It has to be somebody that's seen as a statesman, that's respected, and that has nothing to lose. Hillary Clinton can lose the 2016 nomination or general election standing up too much against President Obama or too much for President Obama. Same with anybody else that may consider running in 2016. The only person that it makes sense to have do this, to fill this role, is, of course, Bubba, 42nd President of the United States. And as you can see, although he's stately, he's taking a little bit of joy in doing this. So it's a little bit of everything, and we'll see how it plays out. Will President Obama respond? Or, yeah, well, he'll respond. I'm pretty certain he will. What do you think? You know where to find me on Twitter, LENNYMCALLISTER, on Facebook, tinyurl.com/LENNYPA for the PA native GE. Looking forward to talking to you soon. Appreciate you joining me. As always, have a wonderful hump day, and I will talk to you on Thursday. If you're in the Pittsburgh area, catch the rebroadcast of Pittsburgh Now. Had a lot of fun on there with former State House Rep, former State Senator, former Allegheny County Commissioner Mike DeWita, and host who's been here for years, Chris Moore. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me on. Thank you for having me on PCNC. I look forward to catching up to all of you all again soon. TCNGB, take care, and God bless. Peace.